Welcome to the channel. It's been a little while since we talked about Retroid devices on this channel, mainly because of the whole issue with the Retroid Pocket Mini not having the screen it was supposed to have. But we actually have another Retroid device we're going to take a look at today. This is the Retroid Pocket Classic, and I was interested in this device mainly because I got the 6-button model, which we'll see, because I'm always looking for something to play Genesis and Sega CD with the appropriate controls. So this device here has Snapdragon G1 Gen 2, which is a chip I haven't used for anything before, so we'll try this out once we get this unboxed and loaded up. See what it can do, what it can't do. The one I have comes with 6 gigs of RAM. I think all of the 6-button ones do, and some of the 4-button models of the same handheld only have 4 gigabytes. So we have the same screen that's actually in the Retroid Pocket Mini here, except for this time we actually get to see the whole thing. A 3.92-inch OLED, 1240 by 1080, 60 hertz. So I don't think we're doing any fancy black frame insertion with this device, but that's fine. It doesn't really, I don't really see a whole lot of benefit in it personally myself. So not too bad here. This one that I have here has 128 gigs of internal storage, and again, some of the 4 buttons, the little bit less expensive ones have 64 gigs. Pretty sure all the 6 buttons are the 6 gigabyte 128 gig configuration. Somebody can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on this. And it features Android 14 and 5,000 milliamp battery, which does actually support fast charging. So unlike some of the cheaper handhelds that can only do basically 11-watt charging, you should be able to get this battery up and running pretty quickly. So that's a brief rundown of the specs. Of course, you see the box behind the spec slide on the screen right now. So we need to get into this box. So I've got the 128 configuration. You might not be able to read that. And the Classic 6 here. This is the original color. This isn't the actual Genesis color because this is the one I was able to easily get. So we're going to slice this thing open with my big knife here and take a look at the actual device. So we have a little direction sheet here, which we're not going to worry about right now. Quality assurance. And here's the actual device. Looks like you get the device. You get a charge cord, not USB-C to C. No, we'll just leave that in here because if this thing supports fast charging, I will never use this cord. See if there's anything else in this box. Probably not. I don't think it comes with anything else. So no screen protectors here or anything like that. Probably all right. If I need one, I can go grab one from the internet. But it looks like this is what you get here. Just a little quick reference thing, a little spec sheet down here. So we will put the box away for the moment. Take a look at the device. Inside the box. So we have a kind of Vita style D-pad here, and we have A, B, C, X, Y, Z in the right configuration for Genesis and Sega CD. Probably Saturn too. I've never really been a big Saturn fan, so I probably won't be doing much Saturn on this device. Presumably start select. They're not labeled. And oddly enough, none of the Android buttons are labeled. We have, of course, you're not getting analog triggers here. This is much like a the usual vertical handheld buttons here. L1, L2, R1, R2. We'll see if this can do some PlayStation 2, I think. We'll try it, see how well it works. And of course, here you can see the screen that is not a 4x3 screen, despite Retroid trying to make it one in the original RP Mini. So hopefully this will look little bit better than the RP Mini did, since the screen is not being fudged around to fake resolution. We got power and volume on the side. I don't know if this has any charge. I guess we will find out. And I have a micro SD here loaded up with some stuff to try, which we will put into the device once we see if it has any power at all. But controls look okay. The only real competitor for this, I think, for a 6-button device is the RG Arc from Anbernic. And as you can see, it's a bit more compact than the RG Arc. And the Arc was pretty comfortable and had a more Sega-style D-pad. I guess the real disappointment for the Arc, for Saturn fans, was that this thing can't really play Saturn. And for other people that just want to play Genesis and Sega CD, probably the quality of the screen here, because the screen's not actually very good. I mean, it will do for playing old games if you don't have anything else, but the screen quality on the RG Arc definitely leaves something to be desired here. So hopefully this will be a significant upgrade, for the screen quality at least, and power and battery life, so you probably can run Saturn on this with no problem if you are inclined to do so. And maybe even some other stuff. I mean, I tried running some PS2 games on the RG Arc, and, well, I was able to run Persona, but not very well. We'll see if the Retroid here can do a better job. But let's see here. I'm going to plug this in for a moment to charger. And it actually does have some battery here. Right now, it's actually charging at 27 watts, according to I have an Anchor Prime charge board over here, and it looks like it is pulling the advertised 27 watts to charge. So, claim supported here. This does support fast charging, although it's mostly charged, so we probably don't have to actually leave it here to charge. We can actually just fire this thing up, see what it looks like. I will hold down the power button and turn it on. And we will take a look at how this thing does. I'd pause the video for just a second to see if my camera was more or less focused, because I'm on the fixed focus model here. So, looks like it was. So, we will get this thing set up. Welcome to Retroid Pocket Classic. You will like it. Let's get started. Well, I'll be the judge of that, but I may in fact like it. So, next is R1. So, we will hit next. Select the language English. Of course, we got touchscreen here. I don't have to hit the buttons. We're going to connect to the internet here, so I'm going to pause the video again just for my Wi-Fi settings. Be right back. Okay, so we have Wi-Fi. Now, one thing I will say, typing in the password, it is a little bit finicky to type on this small screen, which is actually an issue I had with the Retroid Pocket Mini, so I'm not really surprised. It's not a deal breaker or anything, it's just the keyboard is a little small on this 3.92-inch screen. But I was able to get the password in. The Eastern Standard Time is actually fine, although it's actually Eastern Daylight Time right now. I'm going to have Google Play because I will be installing stuff from the Play Store. What do we got pre-installed? Well, we'll see what some of these are. I'm not really, I'll put DuckStation on there. Gamepad Tester. PPS, SPP. Save ourselves a little time. Although I have some more recent versions than some of these, but well, we'll try out a few. Don't feel the need to necessarily put on stuff I'm not really going to use. But this is what you get. You want to install without hooking up to the internet, you get Citra, Dolphin, DuckStation, Flycast, M64, let's see, Moonlight. And I'm not going to be streaming on this thing. A couple other things, PPSSPP, Steam Link. Again, I have no intention of streaming on this device, so we will leave that off. We are using the Android launcher. All right. So we have a few things set up here already. I think what I'm going to do is pause the video for a bit and put in my micro SD card, copy some stuff over, and we will start playing some games. Back with the Retroid Pocket Classic, and to be honest, it's been a little later after the recording of the first segment of this video than I'd intended, mainly because when I set this up the first time, I needed to log into a Google account to get access to some of the apps I wanted to download, and the sign-in glitched, gave me the old your account is already signed in on this device error, and so what I did was, rather than fiddle around with that, I just factory reset the Pocket Classic here and just installed everything again. So after that, I put some emulation and games on here so we could test this thing out. Now, I've had a little bit of a chance to play around with this thing once I got the main glitch of not being able to download anything sorted out. But we've got some stuff installed here. We will probably start off here with taking a look at how Android games run on this. So the usual benchmarks that we use for a lot of these handhelds, we'll start with some of the big name Android games here. And first up, Zenless Zone Zero, which is a kind of modern action RPG gacha game that is often used for benchmarking purposes. So we'll see how well this little handheld does on it. Might mute the sound for a bit, but turn it down. Seems to be a little loud. I mute the sound for a second for the game. Those of you familiar with this game may notice that there's a problem already. And you'll definitely see what the problem is in just a second when the game finishes loading. Looks okay here, but just wait. So looking at the graphics here, I have everything set on low graphics. I don't have the controller set up now. The controller kind of works. You can kind of move around here, but if you notice, there's something missing. Like, a lot of the textures are just not here. So while you can kind of look around and see some game graphics here, a lot of it's missing, and it's running pretty slow anyway. This is actually on, let's check, make sure. This is on high performance mode, so this should be about as fast as it's going to get. I would say, well, definitely because of what's going on here with the graphics, but think Zenless Zone Zero, unfortunately, I would classify this as completely unplayable on this device. Let me walk outside, you can see kind of what's going on here. Now that the game's loaded outside, you can definitely see what's going on here. You can see the sky, but notice that most of the textures for the environment are gone. So you're not going to be doing a whole lot of Zenless Zone Zero gameplay on the Retroid Pocket Classic. Oddly enough, all the other Retroid handhelds that I've tested recently do run the game, but I guess there's something with the chip in this device. It's not the RAM, because the Retroid Pocket Mini, which also has 6 gigs of RAM, runs the game just fine, even if a bit slow. So, no Zenless Zone Zero on this device. Now, that said, we'll check one of the other miHoYo games. Kind of the classic for testing these things out, Genshin Impact. So we'll take a look at Genshin Impact, see if it fares any better. I'm not going to worry about enabling the controller support on this just because it's kind of a pain. So, as you can see, it looks like the graphics are actually here. So, let's start the game and see how this goes. These things always take so long to load. By the way, if the screen looks bright here, it's only on half brightness. So the screen for this thing definitely puts out a lot of light. So this probably helps if you want to play this handheld outdoors. Oh, here we go. So as you can see, Genshin Impact seems to work okay on this device. I don't see any issues with textures not loading and other stuff like that. Frame rate's not the best in the world, but you know, for a very compact, you know, relatively inexpensive device like this, not too bad. But it definitely looks like not really playing this seriously. I just want to see if the frame drops if there's a bunch of enemies around. Looks like it's handling the game pretty well. So if you really wanted to play Genshin Impact on this device, you could. Seems to work okay, unlike Zenless Zone Zero. So we'll get out of this and check one other game. So let's take a look at Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. And this game actually should run on this with no problem. The only issue I think with a game like this is going to be control. So we'll see kind of how the controls handle, because this game supports controllers, but most phone controllers have joysticks and don't have the 2 extra buttons. So looking around here, first thing you notice is the interface doesn't quite fit. I mean, you can kind of see what you're supposed to see here. That's supposed to say arrows and not just O's. You can definitely see the interface does not want to fit in here. So that doesn't necessarily mean you can't play at all, but it does mean that it's going to be a bit of a pain to actually read what's on the screen, because it's not going to scale properly to this almost square screen. The other thing is, this game requires the joystick to move, so what we're going to have to do if we want to actually move around is enable the virtual joystick, and then we can actually move and do some basic combat. One problem is the right joystick controls where the camera goes, and it's going to be hard to have both of them enabled at the same time. So I'd say playing this on this handheld is not going to be very pleasant. It's technically not unplayable, and the frame rate and all is fine. So it's not an issue of, oh, this thing can't run it. The issue is going to be, oh, for this handheld, you're going to have a real hard time controlling it. Unless you want to stick to strictly on-screen controls, this is not going to be a very fun experience. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance on the Retroid Pocket Classic. Close that out. So we've seen Android games. As you can see, some of them are not going to handle scaling to the screen very well. Some of them don't run at all, for whatever reason. I'm not sure why Zenless Zone Zero doesn't work, but I'm not the only person that's had trouble with Zenless Zone Zero on this particular device. And I actually have Fate Grand Order here, and I do play a bit of Fate Grand Order, and Fate Grand Order itself works, but there are some oddities with this handheld. For example, this is a little program here to automate Fate Grand Order battles, because they can get kind of tedious if you want to farm the same node like 100 times. So there is a auto battler here for Fate Grand Order, and it works through accessibility on the handheld. Problem is, if I want to start the accessibility service, which you have to get this thing to run, you click on it, there should be up here some settings for which accessibility services you want to run. And for whatever reason, Retroid has screwed this screen up so that they're not there. So it is not actually possible. See, you can try to do it and it brings you to this settings screen. And I've looked all through the settings. They haven't just moved it anywhere. They've basically just taken it out. So this is not going to be a Fate Grand Order handheld for me, because if I can't run Fate Grand Automata, FGA, then I ain't playing on that handheld, because I'm not grinding 100 nodes of a farming node manually. No one wants to do that. So they've got some things screwed up on this handheld in the settings, like the accessibility stuff doesn't work. And that's not just for this app in particular. Any accessibility apps, like, oh, you want to do a key mapper or anything, well, you're not going to get those to work on this either. Now, I have read that you can conceivably use ADB through the USB cable to kind of force the settings on, but this is something that shouldn't happen anyway. I shouldn't have to do this just to get a basic app to work. And on Retroid's other handhelds, at least the Retroid Pocket Mini, which I have, they haven't screwed this up. So the accessibility settings work fine on that, just not on this one. So maybe that will be addressed in an update, maybe not. I don't think there's really been much in the way of updates for the Pocket Classic recently, because Retroid's kind of moved on to coming out with whatever new handheld they're going to be out with in a couple of weeks. But it's a little disappointing that I can't get my accessibility stuff working on here. But the game, Fate Grand Order itself, runs fine. And it's a pretty basic game anyway. It doesn't take a whole lot of CPU power to get it to run. So not surprising. Of course, the bread and butter of this device isn't really going to be running Android games. Android games are kind of a bonus here. But what we want to take a look at is emulation. We have some rules on this channel, and one of the rules is if one of these devices can be tested by playing Star Ocean 3 for the PlayStation 2, then we shall play Star Ocean 3 for the PlayStation 2. So the first game we will test out on the Retroid Pocket Classic is, of course, Star Ocean 3. So let's get into this and see how well this little device performs. I have this running through the other SX2, the 4248 version, and I have it set to 1x resolution because upscaling to a screen that's not even 4 inches big is, you know, not all that helpful anyway, and I think it made it run a little bit better. So let's take a look at Star Ocean 3. Luckily, this is one game that you can play by and large without the analog controls. So we don't have to worry about, oh, do I need to map the joystick or anything like that. You can see so far, not too bad, but we're going to need to get into some combat to see if we can maintain a good frame rate. So far it doesn't look too bad. You might can push this to 1.5, but I did notice some slowdown at 1.5 resolution in the overworld. Still get a little bit of it in the overworld at 1x, but it's not too bad. Let's get into some combat, since combat's kind of the bread and butter of this game, and see how we do.
What goes around comes around. You don't really want to mess with us.
Moron, know your enemy before you strike the first blow.
So far so good, not too many problems here. Go into an area with some beefier enemies.
You want a taste of my blade?
This.
I'd have preferred a more worthy opponent. You wasted my time.
You want a taste of my blade?
Hammer of might! Spear of might! That was easy.
Seems to be maintaining its frame rate.
Here we go, guys. Get a move on.
I'll go easy.
Ice needles.
Hammer of might!
Lend a hand. Lend a hand.
Spear of might!
Healing.
Spear of might!
Is that all you got?
Spear of might!
Healing!
Healing.
Hammer of might!
Psychic! That was fun.
And that's how you do it.
Oh, we can see so far Star Ocean 2, at least at 1x resolution, performs pretty well. You see, we saw a little bit of slowdown in a couple of places, but nothing too bad. This is actually put on a pretty good showing with this game, as long as you don't want to upscale it too much. Playing this should be more or less perfectly fine. This area that I'm using right here does show some slowdown on underpowered devices, so it's a good little test area to run around in after Paterni. So, we will look at just another game here, just keep going with the PlayStation 2 theme here. Look at a little bit of Grand Theft Auto. I have the music in the cars turned off just because, well, you know, copyright strikes and all that. So, heaven forbid there's a bit of music in a game. So we'll take a look at GTA 3, see what kind of performance we can get out of it. Not sure I'd want to, you know, play this very dedicated on this particular handheld just because of the control scheme, but we can definitely run around and get a feel for the performance of the game. Just make sure the radio's off. What I noticed in this game is if there's a lot going on, particularly if there's any fire effects, I do see some slowdown. But just running around like this, frame rate's fine. Get the car banged up and see if the frame rate slows down.
You're listening to...
Or I could just... See, there we go.
Leave me alone.
In this dream case, maybe she come to work for me. And she get a new beginning herself. She discovered the excitement of the attraction all for herself. This is Janice. You call me 55592.
Now listen, don't try to pimp out my listeners.
That is very a word. A travesty. I work.
Open your friggin' eyes!
How did I manage to get back up? You can see some periodic slowdowns and glitching here, but aside from the controls, you can kind of play yourself a little bit of a PlayStation 2 GTA 3 on here. Something you might be more likely to play, though, is an RPG, so we'll just take a look. I didn't have a save file for this one handy, so it's almost right at the beginning of the game. But we'll take a look and just see what Persona 3 looks like. We at least just take a look at the dorm and the school. We're just wandering around. Doesn't look too bad here.
I'm going. Didn't you see the newspaper? There's a lot going on.
I know. People who had no problems before are suddenly developing acute cases. I've seen it in the news. They say it's due to...
Yeah, right. Otherwise, it's not worth my...
You have a one-track mind. The chairman will be here for the next...
Don't worry, I'm just getting a little practice.
This isn't a...
But it is a game.
Oh, he's back.
So that's probably enough for you to get a good idea of how just some relatively light, basic PlayStation 2 games perform on the Retroid Pocket Classic. I wouldn't do anything like the Baldur's Gate games or Champions of Norath on this, because I don't think it would work very well. The heavier games, I don't think you'll get much mileage out of that, but I was actually surprised this performed actually better than I thought it would for games like Star Ocean. A lot less glitching than I would have thought. So, not too bad a performance for just basic PlayStation 2 stuff. I think the real issue you'd have for a lot of PlayStation 2 games is the controls more than anything, because a lot of PlayStation 2 games kind of assume that you have dual analog controls. But, some basic RPG games like the ones we've tested here should work pretty well on this device. We're going to take a look and see how the Retroid Pocket Classic performs with PlayStation 1 games. This is Colony Wars, which is ideally played with an analog controller, but it does support digital controls, so we will see how this goes. So I will blame any bad aim on the control scheme here, because I almost always play this with an actual joystick. But let's see how this runs. This is at 3 times native resolution here, which looks good enough on this little screen.
This is Midas Starport. We are under attack. Please assist.
remaining.
I give up. I'll just stun him.
This is Midas Starport. Surrounding area clear. Well done. You are clear to dock.
And see, the performance on this is
Docking
fine. Of
sequence
course,
initiated.
you would expect this for the a system this powerful that can run PlayStation 2 games to not have too much trouble running PlayStation 1 games upscaled either. But, so, this control scheme should by and large work pretty well for a lot of PlayStation 1 games because a lot of them were designed with no analogs in mind. But I think this is not the system I would choose to play Colony Wars on. Mainly because Colony Wars and some of the other games I like to play are analog focused. You can actually play games that expect analogs by simulating an analog stick with the D-pad, kind of like you do for PlayStation 2 games. But there's usually no point on PS1 games of trying to do that. Only a few games really expect analog control. This happens to be one of them. I mean, it supports digital control, but you really don't want to play it this way. But as you can see, the performance for PlayStation 1 games is, as you would expect for a system this powerful, just fine. So if you're curious as to what PlayStation Portable games would look like on the Retroid Pocket Classic, here's actually Street Fighter for the PlayStation Portable, and there's going to be a couple issues with PlayStation Portable games. Of course, one is there's no analog here, and the PSP has a lot of games that expect you to be able to use both the analog stick and the D-pad. This is not one of them, so a game like Street Fighter is perfectly playable on the Retroid Pocket Classic. Now, one thing is you might wonder, okay, well, how big is the screen compared to a real PSP? So here is the properly sized screen on the Retroid Pocket Classic. Here is an actual PSP screen for comparison. You can see that the actual PSP is substantially larger. Now, it's not as sharp and clear because the original PSPs, this is a PSP 3000, doesn't have a nice OLED screen, but it is larger. And, you know, if you're concerned about size, well, PlayStation Portable games on a screen that gives you this much space, not ideal. It's actually more comparable to the size of the PSP Go. And a lot of people thought the PSP Go, the screen was too small on it. But it's kind of comparable to that, although it's a lot larger than the PSP Go just to hold in your hand. But not really original PSP sizing here. But as you can see, this is running at 60 frames per second, so no real problems. Except I'm just terrible at fighting games. I don't really usually play fighting games. It's not my genre here. I'm lucky if I can pull off a move at all. But people that care about such things, the D-pad's probably fine for this sort of thing. Again, not my real genre here. You don't see me playing fighting games on here. And this is just training mode, mainly just to show you the size of a PSP game, and that, yeah, this will run it in terms of performance. This system will run PSP games with absolutely no problems. Just sometimes you might have issues with the controls. You can, on this system, use a virtual joystick to change the D-pad to emulate an analog stick. This will work on some PlayStation Portable games, but there are quite a few that expect you to be able to use both the stick and the D-pad, you know, either simultaneously or fairly similar to one another, and you can't just continually flip back and forth between toggling the virtual joystick. So I'd consider PlayStation Portable games to be kind of a bonus on this system, not because it's incapable of running them, just because it's incapable of replicating the control scheme without having some compromises here. So PlayStation Portable, fine on performance, but it's going to vary from game to game as to whether or not you can actually play the game with the control scheme provided. This is a system I actually got the Retroid Pocket Classic to play on. This is maybe not the one you were expecting, but this is the TurboGrafx 16. This is what you're looking at right now is the TurboGrafx 16 version of Raiden. One of the reasons I really like the 6-button control setup for TurboGrafx 16 games, or PC Engine, if you like, is let's take a look at the original controller. So here is the Turbo Pad, the original controller for the TurboGrafx 16. Now, the issue here is buttons. So you've got the buttons here, and the original pad has rapid fire that you can select if you like, and it's pretty useful in a game like Raiden. But one of the things you can do with this is you can actually assign A, B, and C to be 2 and 1, or A and B. Actually, you could get a multi-button controller for TurboGrafx as well. I don't have one. So I assign this as 2 and 1, and I assign X and Y as rapid fire for 2 and 1. So it kind of behaves like the original controller here, if you have a 6 button. And it feels fairly natural to do that. So I really like this arrangement, and this is one of the reasons I actually like this one originally. It's also for TurboGrafx 16. But let's take a look at how this works in practice. So you can do single shot, or you can do turbo fire as if you'd flip the switch on an actual controller. Got zapped. And that's fine. Serves me right for looking at the preview monitor rather than the actual console. There, that takes care of the last light. So, looking at some other games here. So a little bit of Parasol stars. This is one of Working Design's oldest titles. Working Designs was kind of famous back in the 90s for porting over Japanese games that nobody else seemed to want to. They were also famous for messing around with some of the gameplay. Don't think they did too much on this game, other than just bring it over. Again, I really should look at what I'm doing rather than looking at the monitor. This is not intended to be a gameplay how-to. This is just showing you the performance and the fact that it actually looks really good on this screen. I'm not using any shaders or anything. I don't tend to use them. Of course, this chip is powerful enough that if you wanted to use shaders, you shouldn't have any trouble doing it. This game looks so crisp on this OLED, I don't really want to make it look like it's a CRT. Oh, one left. let's just take care of this boss, and then we'll be done with TurboGrafx. Or try to take care of the boss. And that's good enough. So, I believe you can see that the system actually is pretty nice for something like TurboGrafx 16. Like I said, I particularly like setting up the buttons so that I have the rapid fire controls like an original TurboGrafx controller does. And the 6-button layout's really nice for that. We'll take a look at what I really got this system for, which is more Sega games. So, we've got a few Sega games loaded up here. We'll take a look at. First, we'll take a look at Keio Flying Squadron, which is actually a pretty darn rare disc for Sega CD. I've actually had this since it was new. I think I bought it from Best Buy back in, well, 1994 or so. But little shooter. We'll see how it does on the Retroid Pocket Classic.
And what were you doing while they were stealing the key from us? You went to get a snack, you fool!
Ow! You don't have to get so upset about a dinky key.
You don't understand anything. It was Dr. Poon who stole it from us. A super intelligent raccoon. His IQ is 1400. Can you even guess how important that key is?
Well, what is the key for?
It's for the secret treasure.
Then what is the secret treasure, Grandma?
Don't ask so many questions. The only thing I remember is, it's called Arc.
Arc? I wonder what it is.
Dr. Poon wants to use the Arc to turn this planet into a raccoon world.
Hey, why not? Sounds like fun.
What a fool you are. It was totally your fault. You know that. You really should... I guess you'll never learn. Well, listen, Rami. Until you get that key back, you will get no food.
Wait!
That's right. No key, no dinner. You'd better hurry and chase them down.
I hate this. Hey, Spot, we gotta go. Spot? Are you still sleeping? Wake up!
I forgot you can run into the ground. We'll play this one in a little while. Oops. him out. Oops. Oh well, it's enough Keio Flying Squadron, I think. Let's take a look at, well, it can't really be Sega without a Sonic game, right? So let's play a little Sonic, just to make sure we're talking about Sega here. Here's Sonic CD. Oops. So, as you can see, this Retroid Pocket Classic has absolutely no trouble with Sega CD games, Genesis games, what have you. Of course, you wouldn't expect it to. I'm actually not trying out any Saturn today just because, well, I don't have any Saturn games ripped and ready to go. Was never really that into Saturn, more into the Genesis and Sega CD and Dreamcast. So we've seen actually that this is a pretty capable emulation machine, mainly limited by less so much the power of the system, but the limitations of the controls you have. So you don't have any analog triggers here, you don't have any analog sticks, and you've just got the D-pad and buttons. But you at least do have 6 buttons. So I think this is an excellent system for your Sega and Genesis fix. So we've played around with the Retroid Pocket Classic now for a while, looked at several different kinds of games running on everything from Android through PlayStation 2 to the thing I think this was really designed for, which was some Sega games. So after all of that, how is the Retroid Pocket Classic? Let's talk about some pros and cons. So starting off with the good stuff. The screen on this thing looks excellent. Very crisp, nice OLED screen. Console games look great on this, older consoles. This thing has the power to do shaders if you're into that sort of thing, but with a screen like this, I don't even think you need them. And I'm one of those that doesn't really miss the CRT era because I lived through it, so don't really have much nostalgia for old, flickery, interlacy CRT screens, and this thing looks wonderful. So, very nice, very crisp screen. No real complaints with it. It's not 4x3, but it's better than pretending it's 4x3. And also, this is a pocketable system. So, there are no sticks, no shoulder buttons that stick out. So, they don't stick out like stack shoulder buttons do. No sticks to catch, although it would be nice if there was something like a circle pad that you'd find on a Nintendo 3DS, something that you could at least, or a slider like you find on a PSP, that would make this system usable for games that require at least little analog control. But there's nothing to catch your pocket, so this is something you can stick in your pocket if you like. Sort of like the RG slide from Anbernic here. And in fact, if you take a look at these two systems, they're actually not that different in size. You know, some people say that the RG slide is too big to put in a pocket, but it's really not that much bigger than the RP Classic. They're very similar in size. Now, admittedly, the RG slide is way heavier than the Retroid Pocket Classic, but they're still both nice and pocketable. So another pocketable handhelds, always a good thing if you really want to just shove this in a pocket in your book bag or just in your actual pocket. No problems here. Also, unlike a lot of handhelds that are of this form factor size, this actually supports fast charging. So 27 watt fast charging. So you can actually charge with a modern charger with no issues, unlike some devices that we have here on the screen right now. And you can get a charge this battery in a hurry. So nice having some modern technology in these retro handhelds, so you don't have to like pack a specific charger just to bring your game device. Just plug it in whatever you plug your phone into. It'll work fine. So yeah, fast charging is a nice thing. This is actually a very powerful system for what it plays. So it has no trouble playing any games that you would actually want to play on this thing. I didn't test Saturn, but this thing has plenty of power for Saturn. So if you're into Saturn, you shouldn't have to worry about that. But anything you'd want to run on this, it is definitely powerful enough to do. Unlike, well, that thing, which they make one that actually looks like a Saturn controller, but can't actually really run Saturn games at all. At least not that you'd want to. So, nice amount of power here. Also, this is hard to come by these days. These two are pretty much the only thing that you can get right now that has that 6-button Sega layout. So if you really want that, you either have your choice of the RG Arc D or the Retroid Pocket Classic. And in terms of what you're able to play, I think the Retroid Pocket Classic's a clear winner here, although if you just want to play Sega Genesis, this plays Genesis just fine, and it's way cheaper. But, I think this is probably pretty top tier for systems that will actually give you the authentic 6-button controller experience. So, there's some good things here. Now, there are some things that are less than good. So, one thing is, given that this is a more expensive system than, say, the RG Arc D, given that you're paying for, to some extent, the processor power here, it's kind of a shame that the controls of this thing kind of hinder it from doing anything kind of beyond maybe PlayStation 1 in terms of just being able to use the control scheme that they've given us here. So it's things that want analog control, and that includes Android games that this device is otherwise perfectly capable of playing, just don't play well without any analog control at all. And you can mitigate that to a small extent using the map the D-pad to an analog stick, but that's not a real solution for most of the games that want analog, because they also expect you to have a D-pad that you can access at a moment's notice. So basically, I would avoid this if you're looking to play more modern games, even though this is perfectly capable of playing a lot of PS2 games. It's just that you only want PS2 games that don't expect you to do anything with the analog stick. And for PlayStation 2, that's not exactly the majority of the library. So controls kind of hinder this. Also, for a system that specializes in Sega, we have a Vita D-pad. So if you're a real Sega purist, that's going to be a little disappointing. It's got the wrong D-pad. Another thing, I don't have it on the slide, but the buttons are a little on the small side for Sega. The buttons on the RD are more accurately sized for an original, Genesis controller. I mean, that's just a very minor nitpick, though. They're fine enough. They're just a little on the small side. But I would really like, actually, if they'd put a Sega-style D-pad on this thing. Would have made it definitely more Sega-like. Now, of course, kind of the elephant in the room here is there are lots of cheaper options to play the systems that the Retroid Pocket Classic excels at. So, and it's mainly because of the control system. The control scheme that they have here is that, well, this is suitable for PlayStation 1 and below, and there's, I would almost say, 100 different options that you can buy that will play PlayStation 1 and below. Now, a lot of them, or almost all of them, except for this, don't have the Sega control scheme, and this system definitely is probably your top choice for if you really want a 6-button system. I don't think I'd really recommend the 4-button version of this for anything, because it loses its unique Sega-ness, you might say. But the 6-button version, definitely, if you're looking for a Sega specialist, I would certainly recommend the Pocket Classic. But to somebody like me, it could only be a secondary system, because it's just not good because of the controls at playing more modern stuff. So, by the way, if you're interested in playing a bit more modern stuff with the Retroid Pocket Classic, you can take advantage of the fact that it comes with Bluetooth. And you can create yourself, if you like, a Retroid Pocket Classic 10 button system. I've actually tried this. Basically, if you want to do this, this is a GameSir X2S controller, it's Bluetooth, and I happen to have an extra piece of rubber from another controller here, because the only thing about hooking a telescoping controller up to this device is it's kind of narrow. So a lot of telescoping controllers aren't really narrow enough to mount a Retroid Pocket Classic. This one is. The Game Sir X2S. As long as you stick a little piece of rubber in here, and you can actually just play PlayStation 2 games or anything that requires analog sticks with something like this. The thing I do recommend you do if you want to hook up a controller there, though, is just remember, disable the controller under controller style before you hook up the Bluetooth. Otherwise, some stuff tends to get confused. But this will work. It's not pretty. It doesn't block fans, at least, but it does work, and you can actually play your analog stick games. But at this point, you may as well just hook this controller up to your phone, right? So, you know, you can do analog stick games if you're willing to add on a controller. But at any rate, I wouldn't recommend this as your main system if you're looking to play anything analog focused. You know, if you're like Nintendo 64 with the analog stick there, or you're into PSP, or even PlayStation 1 games that like analog control, like Colony Wars. Definitely not PlayStation 2 and systems like that. So this probably wouldn't be your primary system there. Play stuff like Lightning Force on the Genesis, perfection. Well, I think that's about all we need to say for Retroid Pocket Classic. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, remember to leave me a like. It helps bump up my videos in the YouTube search algorithm. If you would like to see more gaming content here, then remember to subscribe to the channel. I will spoiler alert some things here. I've recently gotten a Xbox Ally X, and there's going to be a number of videos on that as soon as I've had a chance to play around with it some more. And most likely at some point, probably not within the next couple of weeks, but at some point there'll also be a Legion Go 2 around here to take a look at. That's probably going to be a while, though, because Lenovo shipping is very, very slow, you might say. But some things to look forward to in the near future. As always, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you join me for the next one.